All right, looks like we're mostly all here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hope everybody is doing well today.
Ken here.
All right, I got you. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I got a screenshot of what everybody as they were coming in. All right, first off, we got a new policy here, and they're asking us to have everyone mask up for the Zoom meetings now. So if you could all get your masks, I'm kidding. Okay. Just a joke. Everybody doing okay today? I saw a few crazy looks from some of you. So yeah, that was kind of what I was looking for. I did see somewhere where they were actually making people do that I think at another school. I think it was like Wisconsin or somewhere like that. They were making them actually wear masks during Zoom meetings, and that makes zero sense whatsoever to me. So anyway, let's real quick, what I want to do before we just jump right into the part that I told you that not the most fun thing that we will cover is the history part, although it's important. I'm just going to hit a couple of the things that we talked about and covered in chapters 1 and 7, just for a little bit of review as we're going along. It won't take but a couple minutes. So the main things from chapter 1, kind of as I'm going through, just remember that therapeutic recreation is purposeful utilization of recreation to enhance someone's health, well-being, or quality of life. Okay, it's recreation for a reason. That's just the key on that. The intervention, recreation, what makes an activity therapeutic recreation in contrast to just recreation? It's going to be that it has to be grounded in a leisure context, number one, and it needs to be purposeful. It's done for a reason. It's not just for fun. It's done to enhance that person's life. So in order to do that, you need to have goals and objectives and an evaluation to see if your people are meeting those goals and objectives and actually getting better. Okay. From there, something to remember as you're planning strategies for recreation therapy, you want to give your clientele a chance to have a voice when you're working with them and setting up their programs. Give them a little bit of freedom and control. So, one of the first things we have to do in recreation therapy is find out what people like to do as far as recreation and leisure. So you find out what they like to do, and then from those things, you find out where their deficits are, and then use the things that they like to do to help them get better with some input from them. Y'all are going to be a lot more likely to want to do something if you feel like you've had some say in it, rather than me saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. There's no, you don't have any say, any input at all. And when you have input, you're going to be a lot more likely to be engaged and interested in what's going on. Let's see, we talked about where therapeutic recreation can be found. Where can you work for there? Do you guys remember any of those places off the top of your head? Anybody want to throw one out there? As far as occupational settings, where would you work?
High school.
Yeah, schools. It's found in schools.
Hospitals.
Hospitals are the number one location for recreation therapists. Unfortunately, our hospital here in town doesn't have a recreation therapy department, but a lot of hospitals have wings, like the therapy wing, where you have occupational therapy, physical therapy, and recreational therapy may all be together in one section of the hospital. But that's the highest number. Long-term care, I think somebody put that in the chat. assisted living and nursing homes, there's a huge need for recreation therapists in those settings. With the population getting older, there's a ton of people in these assisted living homes and nursing homes. Even prisons, detention centers, residential and day camps, community recreation. Like I worked for the park commission in town doing recreation therapy for older adults there. So there's a lot of different places where you can work as a recreation therapist. One of the questions I want to kind of throw out there, what do you think is the most important characteristic of a therapeutic recreation professional? Do you think those who work in helping professions are born with it, or can they learn the necessary skills? What do you think is an important skill for a recreation therapist to be successful?
Patience.
Patience, absolutely. You got to be patient. You got to be compassionate. You got to be a people person, absolutely.
You got to think outside the box to incorporate leisure with a driven workforce.
Right, absolutely. You do have to think outside the box. A lot of times, especially in facilities where you may not have a lot of, some facilities you don't have a lot of money given to the program, and you have to think of ways to do recreation therapy without, on a given budget. So that's another case where you have to think outside the box for sure. You got to be a good motivator. Caring, empathetic, yes, correct. Being a good motivator is definitely a key. You have to, because, okay, I did some consulting at a facility in Batesville for drug and alcohol addiction, and those particular individuals, they come in, they're trying to get off of what they're on when they come in, so they're not feeling good. All they want is alcohol or the drugs at first, and you're trying to, the therapists there were trying to do activities, and what do you think these people are wanting to do? They just want to lay in their room. If they're out there in the group setting, they don't want to interact. They're all just sitting there just dead, so they had some really, really good recreation therapists at that facility that were great at motivating those people to engage in what they were doing. And the thing about it, once you can motivate someone to participate, if you give them an activity that they enjoy, then the next time it's time for recreation therapy, they're going to be far more excited about it. I don't know if you could call them excited in that position, but they're going to be far more willing and looking, they'll come participate next time without as much dragging. So that's the key, is just getting them there, getting them a good experience under their belt. And then from there, it gets easier. As far as chapter 7, I'm not going to go through all of those, but just again, I'll go ahead and give y'all a big old giant hint here. It's going to be, that's the chapter on the allied professions where we talked about the child life specialist, art therapist, kinesiotherapist, athletic trainer, and the allied forces that we're talking about here. Those are just other groups that you would work with potentially as a recreation therapist, interdisciplinary group, to try to all give your own expertise to help them get better. So how I'm going to test you on this part will be like a big giant matching question. Be able to recognize what each one is and match it to what they do. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I'm not here to trick you guys. I want you to learn the stuff and take something from this class. Know the difference, obviously, between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. What's the number one difference?
Psychiatrist is a doctor, like a medical doctor.
Yes, a psychiatrist is an actual doctor and they can prescribe medication. A psychologist is a behavior, they deal more with behavior modification. they do not have the ability to prescribe medication. So that's the key on that. So I'm going to try this, and I'm going to share my screen now. And I want you guys to watch this video because it plays very much into what we're going to talk about moving forward. I like to start my classes with this. It is goofy. It's kind of funny, but it tells a story in 4 minutes and 35 seconds. So I'm going to share my screen. You guys watch this video, and then we'll talk about it just a little bit when it's done, okay? Okay, are you guys seeing a YouTube video now? Okay.
You guys ready for me? This is a proud moment for me and for our great city. I want my grandchildren to look back on today and say this was the time when my grandfather opened the eyes of his community to the unfortunate, to those who could not ordinarily get through life like the regular people in his community. Today, with the help of one of our city's best-known handicapped persons, we celebrate a new and enlightened chapter in our sense of lament, responsibility, and morality. Today, we look into the pleading eyes of the handicapped who need that extra bit of help and say, we will help you. We have compassion. We admire you for facing up to your limitations and seeking a life where happiness is not completely futile. Those of you who must be confined to a wheelchair, who must endure the restrictions imposed by misfortune, to you, we are here today to dedicate what I call the ramp of hope. Thank you. To some, this may be just a simple structure, a convenience to ease the burden which life has inflicted on a poor minority. But I would say it differently. This is a commitment from us who have our help to those who do not. It says we accept our responsibility to take care of you. You, our handicapped friends, when your arms tire from the hardship of mobility, when your minds tire from the pressures of basic subsistence, when you can no longer endure, you can look to this symbol of sympathy and say to yourself, I do not have to get through life without a helping hand, for that helping hand is here for you. Let us now dedicate the ramp of hope to the Well, I've said enough. Our feelings and attitudes are evident. And with that, I would like to ask our friend and symbol of those in his condition to dedicate the ramp of hope and be the first to roll down these planks, which are the fruit of the city's generosity. Mr. Shepherd, could we prevail upon you now to do the honors?
Okay. In recreation therapy, I know that was, like I say, that was a little bit goofy and it was over the top, but it was done that way to make a point. So what, and we'll get into this as we go along. One thing to understand, especially when we are working with people who may have disabilities of some sort, we don't need to talk down to them. We don't need to, I mean, how many things do you think 30 things that he probably said that were inappropriate in that speech? I mean, it was a lot, and it was really, really bad, and it was very demeaning. So, and like I say, I don't think ever you would see something quite to that extreme. I do think that it's a good indicator of how, things can be used as a publicity stunt or something along that line. That was obviously more about Mr. Mayor or whoever that was talking than it was about the guy in the chair. So you could clearly tell, for lack of a better way you could see dude in the wheelchair getting pissed, like straight up. He was not happy with the situation. And of course I've seen this thing 100 times and it still makes me happy when he starts going down the steps, because that was the absolute perfect thing to happen at that point, I thought. So just something to think about with recreation therapy as we go forward into some of the other things, that how we talk to people is very important. You don't talk down to people who are different than us. And that's a big key with recreation therapy, because the people that we're dealing with are people that we're trying to help and we're trying to build up. So what was happening there is absolutely a contradiction to what we're looking to do there. So some people say they saw that coming. I agree. He did definitely show them. So let's, I'll jump on into this fun stuff that that I told you we would be talking about today, the history part. So let me go back to share screen again. And we'll go to the PowerPoint here. And we will talk about the history of therapeutic recreation. And like I say, I told you guys last class that this is probably my least favorite chapter that we will cover this semester. But there are some people that you need to know about. There are some, as far as history goes, one of the main things to take from this, and the reason that history is important, not just here, but anywhere, is, you can look at things and see what worked and see what didn't work. And it saves us some trouble. If we see something is not effective, then why would we try it too if it's been shown multiple times not to work? Things like that. So history is important to look at, and I won't stress it much other than what we're going to talk about today. And I'll try to tell you the parts that are going to be important for testing, like I have been doing, and we'll get our way through this stuff, guys. So history in general, kind of like what I was just saying, it helps us to avoid past mistakes. It documents successes. When people see a success, that shows that the likelihood of doing the same thing and finding success is going to be higher. History helps predict consequences of actions based on the things above. provides professional identity for the recreation therapy profession, and it supports perceptions of present reality. How the past is interpreted affects the present. So, as far as the origins of therapeutic recreation, it was seen, and we're talking about community and clinical models. It was seen way back in European areas with just humanitarian treatment going on. There were medical spas and thermal baths were kind of one of the precursors for recreation therapy. Florence Nightingale, we will talk about her shortly, and we'll talk about how World War I and World War II played a role in the development of recreation therapy, as well as some settlement houses, and we'll talk about what those are. So during the two world wars, not necessarily, there were two times during the wars that people needed recreation therapy. Number one, during the time they were deployed. Number two, when they get home. So what happened to kind of, this is the very base of recreation therapy, when it kind of started. The American Red Cross, they put what were called recreation huts on military bases. And that was there in large part just to improve morality. You know, everybody was, you're in the worst situation you can imagine. So they saw the importance of recreation. And so they trained specific staff as their, quote, hospital recreation staff. And they had things like libraries, movies, different types of entertainment, games, musical instruments, other recreation opportunities for the soldiers that were there. So that ended up leading to the formation of the hospital recreation section of the American Recreation Society. So that's just framework at the beginning. So next we'll talk about Whole House. This is another kind of founding portion of recreation therapy. It was a Chicago settlement house, started in September of 1889, so that gives you a little bit of an idea. Jane Addams was the founder. There's Mary Kaiser and Ellen Gates Starr were also in on it, but Jane Addams was the main proprietor of the Whole House. You need to know that the Whole House was in Chicago. You need to know that Jane Addams was part of this program. And what they did is they used recreation programs therapeutically to address social problems. Rather than drinking, gambling, things like that, they had people, gave them an outlet with expressive arts, leisure education, bibliotherapy, which is just library basically, specific readings to help address social problems and keep them out of harm's way. Much as, you know, say the Boys and Girls Club does for children these days, or YMCA has programs where, you know, kids are active and recreating and in a environment that's positive rather than just being out getting in trouble, you know. So that's kind of where this started. This was for adults though. I'm not going to test you on that. I'm just going to skip the things that are not really key on this because, like I said, it's not my favorite stuff either. The therapy orientation to therapeutic recreation. Hospitals started to see that recreation therapy, the use of therapy in the hospital setting, could be used to help cure or improve situations for people that were in their setting. So they used recreation and leisure for medical purposes. So this was actually very early on in the process still. I mean, we're looking at 1945 to 66. The recreation therapists helped physicians in the treatment. They selected activities based on the capabilities that the people had, as well as, you know, obviously, if they wanted to be successful, they were helping to offer things that the people enjoyed doing as well. From there, the recreation therapy section of AAHPER came to be. And then there was a National Association of Recreation Therapists that was formed at that point. It started out early on, obviously, when things are being formed and put together. Most of the time, there are different groups that are trying to all interject their own thoughts about how something should be done. So you had different groups in, you know, recreation therapy, the framework as well, you know, the American Recreation Society, AAHPER, the National Association of Recreation Therapists, and the National Association of Recreation Services for the Handicapped. They were all interjecting, they all kind of had similar but differing ideas as far as how to use recreation, and they all kind of wanted, it was kind of a power struggle actually between these groups. Then we got to the point from the utopian years, they're saying here, was 66 to 84. And there was an actual movement to stop being so disjointed and to bring all of the professionals together, not have 4 or 5 different groups that were separate and doing different things. They wanted to unite. They wanted to have things that were uniform across the board for the delivery of recreation therapy. So the NRPA, National Recreation and Park Association, was formed from the merger of the following things, and they're listed below. I'm not going to read them all out, but you had state parks, park executives, recreation association, association of zoo parks and aquariums, and the American Recreation Society. Okay, I lied, I did read them out. But those were the ones that formed together into the National Recreation and Park Association, which is still going today. So then the National Therapeutic Recreation Society, it's a branch of NRPA, which we just talked about, National Recreation and Park Association. So you need to know what NRPA is. You need to know what NTRS is. That's the National Therapeutic Recreation Society. And the purpose of the National Therapeutic Recreation Society was to bring rights for people with disabilities to light. Bring that more out into the open. Even things such as wording on situations. When I first started working, okay, I'm dating myself again here with age, but when I first started working at the NMRC here in town years ago, now it is the North Mississippi Regional Center. When I got there, and that's what's on the side of all the vehicles and, you know, the front gate and all that. When I first started working there, on the side of the buses and the entryway, it was the North Mississippi Retardation Center. So clearly you see where that kind of follows along with the video we watched. You know, that's not the best language to use. They changed it to regional from retardation. And that's kind of what was happening here through the NTRS. They were kind of putting it out there that we needed to address people with disabilities and give them rights and respect. In 1981, the NCTRC was formed. This is another important one that you need to know. National Council for Therapeutic Recreation Certification. It's still going strong now. That is who I have therapeutic recreation certification under. That's the accrediting body for someone who wants to be a therapeutic recreation specialist. You take an exam through them, and that is seen to be proof of competency, and just like any other certification would be. NCTRC, what they were again focusing on social and moral rights for people with disabilities. Normalization, that's a term you need to know about. It's making everyday experiences available for people who do have disabilities that may not have these experiences on a daily basis. Give me 1 second. I know this is an interruption, but my email is blowing up. Okay. Anyway, inclusive recreation is another thing, and that is something that, have you guys had an opportunity to help with Special Olympics? Any of you?
Over the spring when we had that one
Yes.
one time. Yes.
It's a good experience, and depending on which Special Olympic event it is, they have a lot of sports that are called unified, and that's about as inclusive recreation as it gets. Half the team is just like you and I, and half are actual Special Olympians. Play on a team together against other teams made up of the same type group. Now, at the end, if it's softball, you play the tournament just like normal. And at the end, when it's medal time, I get a medal just like they do. And you all get up on the podium together. It is great for normalization and making them feel normal and included. So great stuff right there. They started looking at community reintegration, which is transitioning from clinics back into the community. They wanted people in their least restrictive environment. That's an important term for you guys as well. Least restrictive environment is basically where we want somebody to be able to do as much for themselves as they can, because it gives them a morale boost to be able to do things for themselves. The more things that we do for them strictly takes away their power. They feel empowered by being in their least restrictive environment. They want to have as much freedom as they can. They want to be able to make as many choices as they can. At the regional center, I'll keep going back to that now. So the North Mississippi Regional Center, it's for people with developmental disabilities. A lot of them, there's a wide range. There's clients there that are not very highly affected. They're pretty high on the IQ level, and they are able to make tons of choices on their own, all the way down to clients that people have to basically make all choices for to keep them safe. But as far as least restrictive environment, again, if they're able to choose the clothes that they can wear on a given day, let them choose them. If they're able to choose between several recreation options, give them the opportunity to choose, and that makes everyone feel better there. Community integration is next on here. It's teaching leisure skills for participation once people get back into the community from a setting where they're in a clinic or a long-term care facility. When they get back out into the normal population, they need to have skills to be able to participate in leisure. They need to know what sort of things they can do. They need to know how to get there. They need to know that it's available, things like that. Also, community development became a key, where they started looking at creating accessible and inclusive recreation sites and services. So early on in the class, we talked we look at ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and we know that that provides these sorts of things, accessible environments, equal opportunity for people with disabilities. So that started coming into the framework during this stage as well. Fragmentation years. Now, we've got these different time frames. I'm not going to ask you during what years were the utopian years, or list the 5 things that happened during the utopian years, or things like that. Not going to do that. I just want you to have an idea of how things evolved into kind of present day setting for therapeutic rec. So we got from there into the fragmentation years, where we're still trying to arrive at a unified philosophy. There's 4 different approaches, and there's a table in the book, table 2-3, that has some different approaches to recreation therapy: a recreation service approach, a therapy approach, a combined or umbrella approach, and a leisure ability approach. They're all sort of different ways, theories of how to do recreation therapy. Take a look at that table 2-3 on your own. I'm not going to pull it up or anything right now. The leisure ability approach was accepted in '82. There was a separatist mentality, again, this little clash where therapy approach supporters felt that NRPA structure restricted the ability of therapeutic recreation services to serve their purpose. So in '83, they met at the NRPA convention to discuss creating a new organization. And at that point, ATRA was founded. ATRA, you need to know what ATRA is: American Therapeutic Recreation Association. So take note of that. That's what came from some groups coming together at this point, trying to create a new organization that met the needs of everyone, ATRA. So ATRA is kind of the lead body in, they have a code of ethics for recreation therapy. They have bylaws and things. So this is kind of the governing body for recreation therapy, whereas NCTRC is another high-ranking group for therapeutic recreation. But the NCTRC, that's where you take your test to become a certified therapeutic recreation specialist. So no ATRA, NCTRC, and the other ones that we've named on the way through. So we started seeing some positive steps where ATRA and NTRS worked together on some special projects, such as Joint Task Force on Credentialing, which is basically putting a group together to find out how do we come up with a certification test, or what credentials do we need therapeutic recreation specialists to have to show competency to serve. So that's what this task force was looking at. There's an Alliance for Therapeutic Recreation came to be. They had therapeutic recreation educators conferences where they were able to share experiences, share ideas, and start growing the profession as a whole. And then there was a national conference on the benefits of therapeutic recreation, another chance to share, this is what my people are seeing from what we are doing. People were already practicing therapeutic recreation. There wasn't a lot of certification for therapeutic recreation at this point, but they were doing recreation therapy. So they're sharing the different things that they're doing at these conferences and putting together ideas that work for the profession as a whole. So I am happy to have gone through that portion. We made it. Let me stop there for a minute. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to look myself at the discussion questions. We're at the end of that. So why should students of therapeutic recreation, why are we talking about history? What's important?
Well, you can learn from it,
Absolutely. You can
or
learn.
you can repeat it. Either that's a good or a bad thing. So
Right. You just nailed it right there. It's a good or a bad thing. And you kind of to be able to enjoy where we are now as a profession, you kind of have to know where you started from to get there, and the battles that kind of were fought to find a unified group. Once you know that it was a long process to get there, it's easier to embrace.
I think somebody asked in the chat earlier when we'll have another Special Olympics
I'm
coming
not
up.
sure.
If you,
I'm not sure, but I'm going to be the contact for Special Olympics here. So whenever they get something together, I'll be contacted for sure. And that's something that I really want to do, is to get as many people to have that experience that I can, because some people go into it and really just think they're going to hate it. But if you just go, the energy there is great, and it's fun to be involved. It's fun to help run the events. It's a very positive experience, and it upsets me that this whole COVID thing has got that on hold along with everything else. Now, something that I didn't cover as much as I should have as we were going through, because I didn't want to just kill you with it, that you need to take note of also is, as far as therapeutic recreation, Florence Nightingale does anybody know which group Florence Nightingale was involved with? Red Cross. You need to put the name Florence Nightingale with Red Cross together. She was big in the starting of Red Cross during the World Wars, and had a big part in those recreation bases on, while the people were at war. They were injured, they were upset, they missed their families, so recreation was an outlet that Florence Nightingale helped to bring to them in the field when they were there. So, all right, let's see this. September 10th is supposed to be the start of kickball. We can participate the Thursday after that. Okay. Well, Rennie, send me an email sometime with a little more information, and I can share it with the whole group. Okay.
Okay, yeah, she's talking about right now, but I'll send you an email.
Okay.
And she'll tell me. Yeah.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. If we have any situation like that, it would be good for the ones who wanted to get some actual experience. That would be a good situation, and we'll make it for some extra points or something like that, where it won't just be going. Absolutely, JR, you can bring people that aren't in the class. The more the merrier with Special Olympics, for sure. So Jane Addams was, she started what? Let's just review real quick.
The whole house. Whole house.
Yep. Hull House. Where was the Hull House located?
Chicago.
In Chicago. It was formed because they wanted people to have appropriate recreational activities rather than drinking, violence in the streets, gambling were big problems that in that time frame that were happening. So that was the purpose of Hull House. And you can see how that was the very basic start. They weren't doing really a lot of therapeutic recreation at that point, but they were using recreation as a therapy, if you understand kind of where I'm coming from. They were giving them that as a positive in their life when they needed something positive. They weren't addressing something in specifics, you know, trying to help them gain motor function or work on cognitive ability or anything like that. They were just giving them an appropriate recreation chance. That's kind of what was going on there. So Hull House, Chicago, Jane Addams. Florence Nightingale is Red Cross. She helped to get that whole program started there to get people back in a better frame of mind during that difficult situation. So, all right, give me just a second and I'm going to give you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about next class. So I'm going to leave my thing going. I'll tell you this, if anybody's taking notes and just wants to have an idea, the test, when we have our first test, is not open yet, and I didn't do it on purpose because it's going to cover chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 14. A lot of chapters, but I talk you through everything pretty well, and we'll give you some review materials before the tests. So sounds like a lot. It's really not going to be so terribly bad. Let me pull up the blackboard real quick and just
Can you
see.
say those chapters one more time?
Yes, they are chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 14.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, next. The next chapters we'll go into will be 3 and 4. Let me grab my book. I want to see exactly what those chapters are. We're going to talk about professional opportunities in therapeutic recreation, and then we'll get into the person-first philosophy in therapeutic recreation. Now, that person-first philosophy is, had I wanted to save it, I should have, I could have saved that video that we watched today for person-first philosophy. That's kind of where that fits in chapter 4. But I kind of wanted to break up today with a little something different other than just history. So that's why we went ahead and did that today. So if you want to get ahead and do a little, you can read chapters 3 and 4. That's where we will go from there. Let me look at one more thing. Yeah, 3, 4, 14, and then 7 will be next. But for now, just look at chapters 3 and 4. We'll see how long it takes us to get through those next time. We may do both chapters. We may do one. May do a little more review, things like that. But anyway, that's about what I've got for you guys today. I think that was plenty because it was kind of dry, especially when we got to the history part. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Have a nice day. See you then.
All right, you guys stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.